The safe was empty. I stood frozen, staring at the hollow steel box where our life savings $450,000 had been just hours ago. My wife, Laura, was upstairs, oblivious, humming a tune as if our world hadn't just imploded. My hands trembled as I clutched my phone, the screen glowing with a single text from an unknown number. Thanks for the house and the Ferrari. The words burned into my retina, each syllable a dagger twisting in my gut. How could this happen? How could she do this? My name is Daniel Carter, and I'm a 45-year-old financial advisor who built a comfortable life for my family in the suburbs of Chicago. Laura and I had been married for 18 years. Our love forged through late-night talks, shared dreams, and the birth of our daughter, Emily. We weren't perfect nobodies, but we had trust. Or so I thought. The house, a sprawling 4-bedroom with a wraparound porch, was our pride. The Ferrari, a sleek red beast in the garage, was my one indulgence, a reward for years of grinding. Now, both were gone, along with every penny we'd saved. It started 3 months ago, though I didn't see it then. Laura had been distant, her laughter less frequent, her eyes avoiding mine at dinner. I chalked it up to stress. Emily was applying to colleges, and Laura's boutique clothing store was struggling. But there were signs, late-night phone calls she'd take in the garage, her sudden interest in investment opportunities she never fully explained, and the way she'd flinch when I touched her. I ignored it all, convincing myself it was just a phase. I was wrong. Last night, we'd hosted a dinner party for a few friends. Laura was radiant. Her charm turned up to 11 as she poured wine and told stories. I remember watching her, thinking how lucky I was. By midnight, the guests were gone, and we went to bed, her head resting on my chest like always. But when I woke at 6 a.m., something felt off. The house was too quiet. I checked the safety, a habit from years of managing our finances, and found it empty. Not a single stack of cash remained. I stumbled to the kitchen, my mind racing. The Ferrari's keys were missing from the hook by the door. I ran to the garage, heart pounding, only to find an empty space where the car had been. That's when my phone buzzed with the text. Thanks for the house and the Ferrari. I read it again and again, each time hoping the words would change. They didn't. The message was unsigned, but I knew who sent it. Laura's business partner, Ethan Caldwell, a slick-talking real estate developer who'd been circling our lives like a vulture. Ethan had come into our orbit 6 months ago when Laura started working with him on a supposed real estate venture. He was charming, mid-40s, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'd met him a few times, always at Laura's insistence dinners where he'd dominate the conversation with tales of quick profits and insider deals. I didn't trust him, but Laura did. She'd invested $50,000 of our savings into his project without my full consent, promising it would double in months. I should have stopped her. I should have asked questions. But I loved her, and love makes you blind. Now, standing in the empty garage, I felt like a fool. The house title, the Ferrari, the savings all gone. I stormed upstairs, my pulse hammering. Laura was in the shower, singing softly. I banged on the bathroom door. Laura, get out here. Now. The water shut off, and she emerged, a towel wrapped around her, eyes wide with confusion. Daniel, what's wrong? Everything's gone, I said, my voice shaking. The money, the car, the house, and this. I shoved the phone in her face, the text glaring. Her face drained of color, and for a moment, I thought she'd faint. She grabbed the counter, her knuckles white. Daniel, you don't know what's happening, she stammered. Ethan said the investment was safe. He said, Ethan, I roared. You gave him our money, our house, our life. My voice cracked, and I hated how desperate I sounded. Laura's eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were from guilt or fear. I trusted him. She whispered. He promised it was temporary. Just a transfer to secure the deal. He said we'd get it back tenfold. I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. And you believed him? Laura. He's gone. He took everything. And you handed it to him on a silver platter. She sank to the floor, sobbing. I'm sorry, Daniel. I thought I was doing the right thing. For us. For Emily. Emily. Our daughter's name hit me like a punch. She was away at a college tour, oblivious to the fact that her parents' world had just collapsed. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I just stood there, staring at the woman I'd loved for nearly 2 decades, wondering who she'd become. The rest of the morning was a blur. I called our lawyer, who confirmed the worst. The house title had been transferred to an LLC owned by Ethan Caldwell. The Ferrari was gone, likely sold or driven off to God knows where. Our bank accounts were drained, the transactions authorized by Laura's signature. She'd given Ethan access, believing his lies about a temporary hold for a real estate deal that never existed. By noon, I was sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by financial documents that meant nothing now. Laura was across from me, her face red and swollen from crying. What do we do, Daniel? She asked, her voice small. I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But as I stared at the text on my phone, thanks for the house, and the Ferrari fire ignited in my chest. Ethan Caldwell had destroyed us, but I wasn't going to let him walk away. Not without a fight. The next few hours felt like wading through quicksand. Every call to the bank, every conversation with our lawyer, confirmed the depth of Ethan's betrayal. Laura sat silently, her hands twisting in her lap, as I pieced together the scale of the disaster. Ethan hadn't just taken our money, had orchestrated a meticulously planned theft, using Laura's trust as his weapon. The LLC that now owned our house was a shell company, untraceable, without serious legal muscle we couldn't afford. The Ferrari was likely halfway across the country by now, and the $450, our retirement, Emily's college fund, our safety net was gone. I couldn't look at Laura without feeling a storm of rage and pity. She'd been naive. Yes, but she wasn't the mastermind. Ethan was. And yet, her blind faith in him had cost us everything. How could you not see it? I asked, my voice low, as we sat in the lawyer's office. He was too smooth. Laura. Too perfect. She didn't meet my eyes. I wanted to believe him. She said. He made it sound like we'd be set for life. I thought I was helping us. Helping us? I snapped. You handed him our future. My shout echoed in the small office. And the lawyer, a gray-haired woman named Susan, cleared her throat awkwardly. Daniel, yelling won't undo this. Susan said. We need to focus. Ethan's likely left the state, but we can file a fraud claim and try to freeze any assets he hasn't liquidated. Try? I said, incredulous. Susan, we're broke. We can't even pay your retainer. She nodded, her expression sympathetic but firm. I'll work pro bono for now, but you need to decide how far you're willing to go to chase him. Laura finally spoke, her voice trembling. What if we can't find him? What if he's gone for good? Then we start over, I said, though the words felt hollow. Start over. At 45, with a mortgage we no longer owned, no savings, and a daughter who deserved better. The thought made my stomach churn. That evening, I drove to Ethan's last known address, a sleek downtown condo Laura had mentioned. The building was locked, but a neighbor confirmed Ethan had moved out weeks ago, leaving no forwarding address. I stood on the sidewalk, the Chicago wind biting at my face, and called every contact I had in the financial world. Nobody knew where Ethan was, but whispers of his shady deals surfaced. Other clients he'd charmed, other lives he'd upended. He wasn't just a con man. He was a predator. When I got home, Laura was packing a suitcase. What are you doing? I asked, my heart sinking. I can't stay here, she said, her voice barely audible. Not with you looking at me like I'm the enemy. You're not the enemy, I said, softer now. But you made a choice. Laura, you trusted him over me. She zipped the suitcase shut, tears streaming down her face. I know, and I'll live with that forever. But I need space to figure out how to fix this. Fix this, I said, my voice rising again. You can't fix this. Our daughter's future is gone because of you. She flinched as if I'd struck her. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the weight of 18 years hanging between us. Then she grabbed her suitcase and walked out, the door slamming like a gunshot. I stood there, alone in the house that wasn't ours anymore, and felt the walls closing in. The next morning, I woke to a new text from the same unknown number. Enjoy the view from rock bottom. Daniel. My blood boiled. Ethan was taunting me, rubbing salt in the wound. I wanted to smash my phone, but instead, I forwarded the message to Susan. Can we trace this? I asked when I called her. Maybe, she said, but it'll take time. Burner phones are hard to pin down. Time was something we didn't have. The bank was already sending notices about missed mortgage payments, and Emily would be home in a week. Expecting answers I didn't have, I spent the day digging through Laura's emails, her bank statements, anything that might lead to Ethan. I found a trail of wire transfers to the LLC, each one signed by Laura, each one a step closer to our ruin. But there was something else, a name buried in an email chain, Margaret Caldwell, Ethan's sister. Margaret was a real estate agent in Milwaukee, about an hour's drive north. Laura had mentioned her once, saying she'd helped Ethan with paperwork for the deal. If anyone knew where Ethan was, it was her. I grabbed my keys and hit the road, my mind racing with possibilities. Was Margaret in on it? Or was she another victim of her brother's schemes? The drive to Milwaukee was a blur of anger and determination. Margaret's office was in a strip mall, a small storefront with her name on the sign. When I walked in, she was at her desk, a woman in her late 30s with Ethan's sharp cheekbones but none of his arrogance. She looked up, surprised. Can I help you? I'm Daniel Carter, I said, my voice steady despite the fury bubbling inside. Your brother stole my life. Where is he? Her face paled, and for a moment, I thought she'd bolt. But then she sighed, her shoulders slumping. I was afraid someone would show up. She said, Ethan's always been trouble. I didn't know about you until yesterday. Yesterday? I pressed. She hesitated, then pulled out her phone. He called me, bragging about some big score. Said he was heading to Miami with enough cash to disappear. I told him he was a fool, but he never listens. Miami. It was a lead, the first real one I had. Did he say anything else? A name? A place? Margaret shook her head. Just that he'd taken care of some loose ends. I'm sorry, Mr. Carter. I didn't know he'd hurt anyone this badly. I wanted to believe her, but trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. If you hear from him, you call me, I said, scribbling my number on a notepad. And if you're lying, I'll find out. She nodded, her eyes filled with something like shame. As I left her office, I felt a spark of hope for the first time in days. Ethan was out there, and I was going to find him. But first, I had to face Laura and decide if our marriage could survive this betrayal. Laura was staying at her sister's place in Evanston, a 30-minute drive from our house. I called her that evening, my hands shaking as I dialed. We need to talk, I said when she picked up. Her voice was flat, drained of the warmth I used to know. Fine. I'll be home tomorrow. Home. The word stung. It wasn't our home anymore. Not really. But I needed her help if we were going to track down Ethan. When she walked through the door the next morning, she looked like a ghost of herself, pale, eyes red, her usual confidence replaced by a fragile uncertainty. What do you want, Daniel? She asked, setting her bag down. I found a lead. I said, Ethan's sister. She says he's in Miami. Laura's eyes widened. Miami. How do you know she's telling the truth? I don't. I admitted. But it's all we've got. We need to work together. Laura. For Emily. If nothing else. She nodded slowly, her lips trembling. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. We spent the day planning. Susan, our lawyer, agreed to file an emergency injunction to freeze any assets tied to Ethan's LLC. But she warned it might be too late. He's likely funneled the money offshore. She said over the phone. If he's in Miami, you need to move fast. I booked 2 plane tickets for the next morning. Laura hesitated when I told her. You want me to come with you? She asked, her voice small. Yes, I said. You know him better than I do. You might see something I miss. The truth was, I didn't trust her to stay behind. Not after everything. But I also couldn't do this alone. The flight to Miami was tense. Laura stared out the window, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I wanted to ask her 1,000 questions how she'd fallen for Ethan's lies. Why she hadn't come to me first, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I focused on the plan. Margaret had given me the name of a hotel Ethan had mentioned in passing. A swanky place on South Beach. It was a long shot, but it was a start. Miami was a shock to the system bright. Humid. Alive with a pulse we'd never felt in Chicago. We checked into a cheap motel near the airport. The kind with flickering neon signs and stained carpets. Laura wrinkled her nose, but said nothing. We were here to hunt, not to vacation. Our first stop was the hotel. A gleaming tower of glass and chrome. The lobby was all marble and chandeliers. The kind of place Ethan would love to flaunt his stolen wealth. I showed the concierge a photo of him, but she shook her head. Haven't seen him, she said. Her tone clipped. I slipped her a 20, and she leaned in. Try the bar at the top floor. Lots of out-of-towners there. The bar was crowded, the air thick with perfume and laughter. Laura scanned the room, her eyes sharp. There, she whispered, nodding toward a corner booth. A man sat alone, his back to us, but the way he held his drink confident. Almost theatrical, screamed Ethan. My heart pounded as we approached. Ethan, I said, my voice low but firm. He turned, and for a moment, I thought I'd made a mistake. But then his lips curled into that familiar smirk, and I knew it was him. Well, he said, leaning back. The Carters. Didn't expect you to track me down so fast. Where's our money? I demanded, my fists clenched. Ethan laughed. A cold, mocking sound. Money. Oh, Daniel. It's long gone. You should thank Laura for making it so easy. Laura gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. You lied to me, she whispered. You said it was an investment. And you believed me, Ethan said, his eyes glinting. You were so desperate to play the big shot. Laura. It was almost too easy. I lunged forward, ready to wipe that smirk off his face. But Laura grabbed my arm. Don't, she said. He's not worth it. Ethan stood, tossing a few bills on the table. Enjoy Miami, he said. You're not getting a dime back. He walked out, leaving us standing there, humiliated. Back at the motel, Laura broke down. I'm so sorry, Daniel, she sobbed. I thought I was helping us. I thought. Stop, I said, my voice softer now. We can't change the past. But we're not done yet. I pulled out my laptop and started digging. Ethan's arrogance was his weakness, couldn't resist showing off. A quick search on X turned up a post from a local club, tagged with his name, showing him posing with a group of women and a bottle of champagne. The timestamp was from an hour ago. He was still in Miami, and he wasn't hiding. We're going to that club, I said. Laura looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. What if he's dangerous? She asked. Then we'll be smarter. I said, we're getting our life back. Laura. One way or another. The club was a sensory assault, pulsing lights, thumping bass, bodies pressed together in a haze of sweat and alcohol. Laura and I pushed through the crowd, our eyes scanning for Ethan. The ex-post had shown him at a VIP table, surrounded by bottles and hangers-on. If he was still here, he'd be impossible to miss. There, Laura said, pointing to a roped-off section. Ethan sat sprawled across a velvet couch, a woman on each arm, laughing as if he owned the world. My blood boiled, but I forced myself to stay calm. We needed evidence, not a scene. I pulled out my phone and started recording, capturing Ethan's face, the bottles, the women. Laura whispered, "What are you doing?" "Building a case," I said. "If we can't get him legally, we'll hit him where it hurts his reputation." We lingered in the shadows, watching as Ethan tossed cash around like confetti. He was reckless, drunk on his own arrogance. I sent the video to Susan, along with a message, "Can we use this?" Her reply came quickly, "It's a start. Keep digging." As we left the club, Laura grabbed my hand. "I know you hate me right now," she said, her voice breaking. "But I'm with you. I want to stop him." I looked at her, the woman I'd loved for so long, and felt a pang of something grief. Maybe. Or hope. "Then help me," I said. "Tell me everything you know about him." Back at the motel, Laura spilled it all. Ethan had approached her a year ago, claiming he had a foolproof real estate deal. He'd dazzled her with numbers, projections, promises of wealth. She'd signed documents without reading them, trusting his charm over her instincts. "He made me feel like I was part of something big," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I was so stupid." "You weren't stupid," I said, surprising myself. "You were human." He preyed on that. We spent the night combing through Laura's emails and texts, piecing together Ethan's network. He had connections in Miami, other investors, shady lawyers, even a banker who'd helped him move money. By dawn, we had a list of names and addresses. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep going. The next day, we met with a private investigator Susan recommended, a grizzled ex-cop named Mike. He took one look at our evidence and nodded. "This guy's a pro," he said. "But he's sloppy. That club video. He's flashing cash he shouldn't have. I'll tail him. See where he's stashing the rest." Mike's fee was steep, but we scraped together what we could from a credit card. Laura sold her wedding ring to cover the rest. "It's just a thing," she said when I protested. "It doesn't mean what it used to." Her words cut deep, but I didn't argue. We were in this together, for better or worse. Mike called that evening with news. Ethan was staying at a rented penthouse in downtown Miami, paid for in cash. "He's got company," Mike said. "Some guy named Victor. Runs a crypto exchange. Shady as hell." Victor. The name rang a bell. Laura had mentioned him once. A friend of Ethan's who'd vouched for the investment. If Victor was involved, he might be the key to unraveling Ethan's scheme. We staked out the penthouse the next morning, parked in a rental car across the street. Ethan emerged at noon, wearing sunglasses and a tailored suit, looking every bit the untouchable con man. Victor was with him, a short, wiry man with nervous eyes. They climbed into a black SUV and drove off, Mike tailing them in his own car. "Where are they going?" Laura asked, her voice tight. "No idea," I said, "but we're not letting them out of our sight." Mike called an hour later. "They're at a marina," he said. "Looks like they're meeting someone. Big yacht. Lots of security. You want me to get closer?" "Do it," I said. "And be careful." Laura and I followed, parking near the marina. The yacht was massive, gleaming white against the turquoise water. Ethan and Victor were on deck, talking to a man in a linen suit. I snapped photos, my hand shaking. This was bigger than we'd thought. Ethan wasn't just a lone wolf. He was part of something larger. Mike's voice crackled through my phone. I got a name. The guy on the yacht. Antonio Ruiz. Runs a money laundering operation out of the Caribbean. Your boy Ethan's in deep. My stomach dropped. We weren't just chasing a con man anymore. We were stepping into a world we didn't understand. One where the stakes were higher than money. But as I looked at Laura, her face set with determination. I knew we couldn't turn back. Not now. The marina was alive with the clink of rigging and the hum of wealth. Laura and I stayed in the car, watching the yacht from a distance. Ethan, Victor, and Antonio Ruiz were deep in conversation, their gestures sharp and urgent. Mike's warning echoed in my head, money laundering operation. We were out of our depth, but turning back wasn't an option. Our life, Emily's future was on that yacht. Mike texted a grainy photo of Antonio, his face hard and lined, like a man who'd seen too much. I'm digging into Ruiz. He wrote, stay put. But staying put felt like surrender. I turned to Laura. We need to get on that yacht. Her eyes widened. Daniel, are you crazy? They could be dangerous. They are dangerous, I said. But so's losing everything. You want to fix this? We need proof. She bit her lip, then nodded. Okay. But how? I scanned the marina, spotting a group of workers unloading crates onto a nearby dock. Follow my lead, I said. We slipped out of the car, blending into the bustle. I grabbed a clipboard from a pile of supplies, trying to look official. Laura tucked her hair under a cap, playing the part of a worker. We approached the yacht, my heart pounding as we neared the gangway. Hey, a security guard barked, stepping in front of us. This is private. Delivery for Mr. Ruiz, I said, holding up the clipboard. Urgent. The guard squinted, suspicious, but a shout from the deck distracted him. Ethan's voice, loud and annoyed, carried over the water. The guard waved us through, muttering. We climbed aboard, my pulse racing. The deck was polished teak, lined with plush chairs and a bar. Ethan and his crew were at the stern, oblivious to us. Laura whispered, What now? Listen, I said. And record. She pulled out her phone, hiding it in her pocket as we moved closer, pretending to inspect a crate. Ethan's voice was clear now, laced with irritation. You said the transfer was clean. Antonio. He snapped. Now I've got the Carters sniffing around. Ruiz's voice was low, menacing. You were careless. Caldwell. You should have covered your tracks better. I did my part. Ethan shot back. The money's in the Caymans. The house and car are sold. What's the holdup? My blood ran cold. The Caymans. Our money was offshore. Out of reach. Laura's hand trembled as she recorded, her face pale. Victor chimed in, his voice nervous. We need to move the funds before the feds catch wind. The Carters could tip them off. Ruiz laughed. A chilling sound. Let them try. By tomorrow, we'll be gone. I signaled Laura to move. We slipped back to the gangway, my mind racing. We had proof, Ethan's own words. Recorded. But proof wasn't enough. We needed to act before they vanished. Back in the car, I sent the recording to Mike and Susan. Can we use this to freeze the accounts? I asked Susan over the phone. It's solid, she said. I'll get it to a contact at the FBI. But you need to stay safe. These guys don't play. Laura was shaking, her eyes fixed on the yacht. I did this, she whispered. I let him into our lives. I wanted to snap at her, to let the anger pour out. But I couldn't. Not now. We're fixing it, I said. Together. Mike called with an update. Ruiz's operation was under watch by the feds. But they needed more to move. Our recording could be the push they needed. Stay low, Mike warned. I'm meeting a contact tonight. If Ruiz gets spooked, things could get ugly. That night, Laura and I barely slept. The motel's thin walls amplified every sound cars passing. Voices in the next room. I kept checking my phone, waiting for news. At 3 a.m., Mike texted, "FBI's moving on the yacht at dawn. Stay clear." Dawn came too slowly. We watched from a distance as federal agents swarmed the marina, their boats surrounding the yacht. Ethan, Victor, and Ruiz were let off in cuffs, their faces grim. My heart surged with relief, but it was short-lived. Susan called an hour later. The feds seized the yacht and some accounts. She said, "But most of the money's already moved. We might recover 20%. If we're lucky." 20%. $90. 000. If that. It was something. But not enough. Not nearly enough. Laura buried her face in her hands. "It's not over," I said, more to myself than to her. "We'll keep fighting." Back in Chicago, Emily was waiting. We'd avoided telling her the full truth. But she wasn't stupid. When we walked through the door, she ran to us, her eyes searching. "What's going on? Why do you both look like that?" I took a deep breath, the weight of the truth pressing down. "We've got some things to tell you, kiddo," I said, "but we're going to be okay." Telling Emily was the hardest thing I'd ever done. We sat her down in the living room, the house that wasn't ours anymore, and explained everything: Ethan's scam, Laura's mistake, the empty safe, the missing Ferrari. Her face crumpled, but she didn't cry. At 17, she was tougher than I'd given her credit for. "So what now?" she asked, her voice steady. "Do we lose the house?" "We're fighting to keep it," I said, though I wasn't sure how. "The feds are involved. We might get some money back." Emily nodded, her jaw tight. "And Mom?" She looked at Laura, who hadn't spoken. "Why didn't you tell Dad?" Laura's voice broke. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I was wrong." Emily didn't respond, just stood and walked to her room. The silence she left behind was heavier than any words. Laura reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. The next week was a grind. Susan worked with the FBI to track the offshore accounts, but the money trail was a maze of shell companies and fake names. The $90, 000 Susan had mentioned was tied up in legal limbo, and the house was set for foreclosure unless we could come up with a miracle. I took on extra clients at work, pushing myself to exhaustion, while Laura shut down her boutique to save costs. We were surviving, but barely. Then Margaret, Ethan's sister, called. "I found something," she said, her voice urgent. "Ethan kept a storage unit in Milwaukee. I have the key. If there's anything left, it might be there." I drove to Milwaukee alone, not wanting Laura's presence to cloud my focus. The storage unit was in a rundown facility, the kind of place where secrets go to die. Margaret met me there, her face drawn. "I'm not like him," she said, handing me the key. I didn't know what he was doing. I wanted to believe her, but I didn't have the energy to care. Inside the unit, I found boxes of documents, fake IDs, bank statements, contracts. Buried at the bottom was a ledger, handwritten, detailing Ethan's deals. Our names were there, along with others he'd scammed. The ledger listed a second account in the Caymans, one the feds hadn't found. I called Susan, my hands shaking as I read her the account number. "This could be it," she said. "If it's active, we might recover more. But don't get your hopes up." Hope was all I had left. I sent the ledger to the feds, praying it would lead to something. Days later, Susan called with news. The account held $200, 000, enough to save the house and give us a fighting chance. It wasn't everything, but it was a lifeline. When I told Laura, she cried, this time with relief. "We can start over," she said, her voice hopeful. It's not that simple, I said. We've got a long road ahead. She nodded, her eyes searching mine. I know. But I'm here. Daniel, I'm not giving up. Emily was harder to convince. She'd withdrawn, spending hours in her room, her college applications untouched. One night, I knocked on her door. Can we talk? I asked. She let me in, her room a mess of books and clothes. I'm scared, Dad, she admitted. What if we lose everything? We won't, I said, more certain than I felt. We're Carters. We fight. She hugged me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like we might make it. But the fight wasn't over. Ethan was in custody, but his trial was months away, and the feds warned he might cut a deal. The thought of him walking free kept me up at night. I started digging again, this time into Ethan's past. He'd pulled scams across 3 states, leaving a trail of broken families. I contacted his other victims, forming a group to share information. Together, we built a case, pooling evidence to ensure Ethan wouldn't slip through the cracks. Laura joined in, her guilt driving her to work harder than anyone. By month's end, we'd recovered another $50. 000. Enough to cover Emily's first year of college. It wasn't the life we'd planned, but it was a start. The house was still in limbo, but we were fighting the foreclosure with everything we had. 6 months later, we stood in a courtroom, watching Ethan face the judge. His smirk was gone, replaced by a hollow stare. The ledger, the recordings, the testimony from his other victims said all added up. The prosecutor laid out his crimes: fraud, money laundering, grand theft. Laura testified, her voice steady as she recounted how he'd manipulated her. I was proud of her, even if I couldn't say it yet. The judge sentenced Ethan to 12 years, with restitution ordered for his victims. We'd likely see only a fraction of our money, but it was something. Victor and Ruiz faced their own trials, their empire crumbling under the Fed's scrutiny. Margaret, true to her word, cooperated fully, her testimony sealing Ethan's fate. Back home, we were rebuilding. The $250, 000 we'd recovered kept the house out of foreclosure, and Laura got a job at a local nonprofit, her boutique a distant memory. Emily deferred college for a year, working part-time to help out. She was stronger than either of us, her resilience a reminder of why we kept fighting. Our marriage was the hardest part. Laura and I were together, but the trust was fractured. We went to counseling, peeling back layers of hurt and blame. Some days, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with. Others, I saw the stranger who'd trusted Ethan. She felt it too, her apologies endless but sincere. One evening, as we sat on the porch, Laura took my hand. I know I broke us, she said, but I'm trying to make it right. Can you forgive me? I looked at her, the woman who'd been my partner through joy and pain. I'm trying, I said, but it's going to take time. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'll wait. Emily joined us, her laptop open to a college acceptance letter. I got in, she said, a smile breaking through. Full ride. We cheered, the sound echoing across the quiet street. For the first time in months, I felt hope, not the desperate kind, but the real thing. We'd lost so much, but we hadn't lost each other. The Ferrari was gone, sold to some collector in California. The house was ours again, but it felt different, marked by the battle we'd fought. The text "thanks for the house" and the Ferrari still haunted me, but it was a reminder now, not a wound. A reminder to trust my instincts, to protect what mattered, to fight for my family. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold, I looked at Laura and Emily. We were bruised, but not broken. The road ahead was long, but we'd walk it together. And that, I realized, was worth more than any amount of money.